If you couldn't figure out in the previous video how to finish the table or answer question letter D about 1 year without some help, hopefully this can help clarify. If you start to look at the table, remember we found that the pattern was that we started with 1,000 cookies and then added 150 each time. So if I just keep adding 150, I think I can do the table fairly efficiently. And again, if you don't trust your instincts, you can use a calculator for this if you'd like. 1,300 was the last number I had in the table. We know the pattern is adding 150. So if I do another 150, that's 1,450. Add 150 more, that's 1,600. The nice thing about these tables is you can use a shortcut and then you can just get all of the values at once. So 1,750 and then 1,900. So you can do it kind of fast. If you don't feel like you have a calculator that can handle this, just keep adding plus 150, plus 150, plus 150. Now the question that we don't want to do in the table, if I was to guess, was question letter D. Because I don't know about you, but you're probably a practical person, and I'd like to think that I am as well. It took long enough to just do plus 150, plus 150, plus 150, plus 150 to get to week 6. And a year after the debut is 52 weeks later. And remember how in the equation n is the number of weeks? Even when it's not an exponent, it's still the number of weeks, just like it was in question number 1. So if n is the number of weeks and I have 52 weeks to go, the table doesn't seem like it's going to be very efficient, but the equation probably will be. If I think about this, I know that n is 52. So that means I can substitute the number 52 into the equation. I mean, it substitutes on the left, but nobody really cares about the left-hand side. It's the right-hand side of the equation that's doing all the math for us. That's 1,000 plus 150 times, instead of n, 52. And you'll notice I did times with parentheses, but times could just be a dot in between the 150 times the 52. Whatever you like to do is fine. If I type that into my calculator, because that looks like that's going to be a tougher calculation to do in my head, I have 1,000 plus 150 times, so parentheses, 52. And that gives me 8,800 or 8,800. It's a good thing I did this way, because notice I left off on my table, I was still in the 1,000s. So I would have had to keep adding and adding and adding and adding and adding and adding until I got to almost 9,000. That would have taken so long. So you can tell the equation is worth its weight in gold because it helps you really shortcut all of those extra numbers in between and get straight to the answer that you want. Now, because hopefully you've seen the difference between question number 1 and question number 2. Question number 1 had a multiplier, it had a percentage. Question number 2 was arithmetic, it had an adder. You can probably notice these two had slightly different approaches, different looking equations, although we did end up using the equations in similar ways. So the last question, the last task on this lesson is to see if you can answer questions E, F, and G. Comparatively, what did you notice was the basic difference between the first bakery in letter A, the one with the multiplier, and the second bakery, or actually I said letter A, the first bakery in number 1 with the multiplier, and the bakery in number 2 with the adder. In questions E, F, and G, it's going to ask you to compare those two bakeries to see if you can figure out which one is more successful in the first few weeks versus the long run. And then to see if we can figure out a little bit more detail, like when would they actually break even. Again, I'm going to pose this to you as an open challenge, but if you think you can do it, try not to watch the last video and try to do these last few questions. If you feel like you need it, then you can watch the last video and I'll walk you through E, F, and G with more detail.